Hi, I'm August Keller, and this is my review of Deadpool and Wolverine. So I guess I should just rip the band-aid off and say that I found this movie disappointing. I feel like the movie doesn't know what it wants to be, and instead it tries to be everything at once. It's got a very convoluted yet simplistic plot. It's really burdened by this meandering multiverse jargon, but really at its core, it's just another story about heroes stopping bland villains from world domination. And really, the only consistent emotional connection the movie's trying to make is either through fan service or through what I found to be a lot of easy humor. I mean, some of the humor does land, but a lot of it just kind of feels cheap. Like it didn't. I have not. I haven't. There's nothing inherently wrong with crude humor. I think crude humor can be very useful, actually. Some of my favorite shows and movies have crude humor in them, but it needs to be used smartly. And when it's just kind of, you know, crude humor thrown at the wall, it doesn't, I don't find it very impressive. I mean, the first Deadpool was impressive because it was crude humor in a new setting. We've seen it now, and it needs to, you need to take more steps with it. And I find it complacent. And the fan service is, it's funny because, Deadpool's supposed to be this satirical subversion of superheroes, but this movie is just really leaning on fan service, which is the kind of thing that Deadpool's supposed to make fun of. And Deadpool kind of does, but the movie's also trying to just kind of throw fan service at us and hope that we like it. And I mean, yeah, it's kind of interesting in a way, but some of it is really, really kind of like a deep cut. Like people who aren't avid fans of Marvel are not going to understand some of these references. Entire sequences are dedicated to decades old movies, like movies from the early 2000s, movies from the 90s are referenced in depth, and some people in the audience might not know. Like casual people might not know what's going on in this movie. But really, the biggest issue is that the drama is just underdeveloped and sparse. They try to give Logan some a troubled past, which also feels kind of derivative. That's kind of like every Logan movie. Like Logan and the Wolverine both dealt with that already, and it does it again. But this movie does it, in like three scenes. There's not enough time spent. You can tell he's troubled, but they don't really unpack it. And you know, Deadpool, he's got something going on with his relationship with Vanessa again, but these things are not, they're just cramped by this convoluted plot. There's just so much more time is spent on multiverse shenanigans that these things aren't developed enough. So it feels insincere. I can't even really say there's an arc because it's so unearned that, is it even an arc? Does it even hit the minimum beats required to be an arc? Like, because they feel one way and then at the end of the movie they feel a different way, but there's nothing in the middle that necessarily pushes them to change. The acting does conjure up comedy and layers and intensity and vulnerability because these are skilled actors, but no one's really given enough time to solidify true depth, to solidify complex emotions. They just are complex motivation. They just have this motivation and then it's resolved. Okay. So, between these random fan services and leftover bits, it just kind of feels like a bunch of spare parts. That's kind of what this movie feels like to me. The story is just a bunch of spare parts pieced together through multiverse, And I just I wanted to like this movie, and I just feel like the further it went on, the less interested I was in the story, and I was kind of hoping it would just end already. Technically, I found Deadpool and Wolverine pretty underwhelming and muddled. Like the tones are just kind of all over the place. It's a very just kind of unfocused movie, and the style is just not there. It's very plain, kind of even bland. The cinematography, there's just one long side scrolling take that's really fun, and I really was like, I wish the movie was like this more, where took a like a, I wouldn't say artistic choice, but it was kind of a creative choice. But the rest of the cinematography is very basic and even dull at times. There's just not a lot of color, not a lot of variation. It's just kind of the same. Uh, and the editing, it has these psychological inserts, like where characters are remembering something, or having like dreamlike sequences. There's action and there's a couple of montages, but the editing as a whole feels pretty disjointed. There's like the momentum is just kind of clunky, and the structure is kind of like, it feels like unclear what is even the climax. It feels like two or three different moments where, is this the climax? Is this the climax? It's just not clear. And so it just feels disjointed, and it feels pretty bloated too. The movie's only an hour, 2 hours, 8 minutes, but it kind of feels longer, and it feels like maybe it could have been shorter. The sound is solid. There's motivated genre elements and distortions like emphasis and muffling and echoes, silence that are very emotionally motivated. And there are the voiceovers that you get with Deadpool. The music has the comedic pop hits that Deadpool has established. I wouldn't say it does anything new with that. And the scoring, I think it tries to incorporate MCU type scoring, but it's very mediocre. The production design has endless Easter eggs. I mean, I know a lot of people are gonna say that's enough for them, but to me, I also found the production design to look drab. Like they're making a joke that it looks like Mad Max, but Mad Max does not look this ugly. Even older Mad Max from like the 80s looks more interesting than this. It's not colorful. It's very blandly colored, and kind of ugly at times, and I just don't understand why. I mean, it has the characters and their costumes, the recognizable properties, but beyond that, I'm disappointed. Uh, Casting wise, of course, that's the selling point of this movie. It has the two main stars, and it has a lot of cameos, more cameos than even I was expecting. So good job there. I do feel like the villain is a little young to be who she's playing. And I think maybe it would have been more intimidating, more convincing if it had just been someone older. The effects have stunts and makeup, but as usual, I think it relies too heavily on average average CGI. There are a couple fight sequences where it's clear this is a CGI person, and it just makes it less fun to me. Use real people. If you can't, like, try to make it more hidden. So altogether, I think this movie has glimpses of enjoyment. The fan service works sometimes, the comedy works sometimes, the acting I think works. There are things about it. It's in spurts where I'm I'm having an okay time, but I think overall Deadpool and Wolverine is just kind of jumbled, and I'm disappointed by how jumbled it is. I just think it's kind of mediocre, unfortunately. And I know that might be an unpopular opinion, but I have to call it like I see it. So, anyways, that's all I have to say about that. If you like what I'm doing here, please feel free to like and subscribe. I also have Instagram linked in the description. I'd like support there as well. But at the very least, I appreciate you watching, and I'll see you next time. Okay, Thanks. Bye.